Hello everybody, Jamie here from FM Scout. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the ultimate guide for pairs and combinations and getting the right balance when you first take over a club with your tactics and your team on a Football Manager 2020. This is going to be quite a long video, so strap yourself in. Also, a big thank you to Lalama on the FM Scout website, who's allowed us to publish this guide on the FM Scout website and put it into a video format. So thank you, Lalama. I'll drop the link in the description below. Drop a like on the video. If you do enjoy this and you are new around here, make sure you subscribe and try and watch the video the entire length. You will learn some very, very useful tips in regards to pairs and combinations. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The first thing we're going to talk about is how do we achieve balance on FM20. So it's about using the roles and the duties to spread your team well, create different types of chances, and to have a coherent defensive strategy. That's the main thing. In terms of duties, this means the number of defend, support, and attack duties and how they spread throughout the team. This will determine in large part how aggressive your team behaves in terms of forward runs, take-ons, and risky passes. So of course, the main thing is to make sure you spread your attack, support, and defend duties throughout your team. This means not having all attack duties at the top end of the pitch and not all down a single flank, which would help in terms of balance regarding your tactic. Obviously, if you have your attack duties too high up the pitch, it creates a disconnect between defense, midfield, and attack, which is of course where the problems start happening. I'm going to give you two examples right now of a good style and a bad style. Let's go. I'm going to give you a bad style now and explain why. So on your screen right now is a bad example of roles and combinations. So you can see the whole of the top line is attacking, the midfielders are on support, and the whole of the defence is staying back. This, of course, will create large gaps between each area of the field. The defenders will stay back, the midfielders are isolated, with the forwards all staying up front. So that kind of tactic does not work. So on your screen right now is a much better example of how to use duties with different areas of the team dropping off and pushing forward, creating different angles of attack. The middle and both flanks have all an element of penetration as well. As you can see, the fullback on the left is on support while the winger is on attack. On the right hand side, the winger's on support while the fullback's on attack. This is a very good way of pairing your combinations and roles. So what difference does each duty make? The more support duties you have, the closer your team will stick together essentially. This of course can be useful if you're trying to sit compact or move into a pack to support a pressing or possession game. Don't forget, obviously, other systems can work. This is just a guide to help you give some balance in your squad when you first take over. So obviously we're going to start with goalkeepers. So obviously you all know goalkeepers are an integral part of your team's tactical setup. Let's have a little look through a few of the things in regards to goalkeepers in possession on the team instructions profile. So your goalkeeper has several options right here. So it has roll it out, throw it long, short kick, and long kicks. So let's go through each one individually. So a short distribution option works well with building play from the back, and works particularly well when you have a good creative outlet, like a ball-playing defender, a deep-line playmaker, or a regista, who can help create chances from deep positions and help maintain possession. So if you do play kind of a ball-playing defender, DLP, roll it out and start from the back is how kind of a ball-playing defender would operate. You also need to consider which players are in space to receive the ball. Your fullbacks are frequently the most likely players to have time on the ball, although their angles of passing are limited by playing out wide. Conversely, a centre-back may have a wider range of passing angles, but maybe press quicker by opponents, so don't forget, remember that. A quick throw-in option supports a more direct counter-attacking approach, appears to suit distribution to fullbacks and wingbacks, who naturally tend to have the most space from the back, and helps speed play out from the back at a much quicker tempo. You can always ask your goalkeeper to distribute to the flanks, and at the same time enhance his style of play. The long kicking approach significantly suits more physical, taller option further up the field. If you play a target man or a wide target man, these are highly suitable options to distribute long to. This also works well if your team is being passed at the back and you are struggling to play the ball out from the back. This can alleviate pressure and get your team further up the field in a more comfortable area of the pitch. Your goalkeeper can also help control the tempo of the game and can hold the ball for a long periods when you're trying to slow the game or hold on to a lead. You can distribute it quickly instead if you are trying to keep the pressure on the game or desperately in search of a goal. A sweeper keeper can provide more creative options from open play and suits a counter-attacking game from the back in terms of distribution. So let's talk about sweeper keepers. Obviously on FM20 a lot of you do use sweeper keepers, so let's just familiarise ourselves exactly what a sweeper keeper does. So a sweeper keeper will sweep up in front of and wide of the penalty area. He can compensate for a high line and the offside trap being breached. A normal goalkeeper will hold position far more and as a result tends to suit being sat behind a deeper defence, claiming crosses and distributing the ball safer. If you have a high line, it may be more appropriate to try and beat the opposing forwards to the ball instead of standing up and facing a shot. where the opponent has time to set himself. If you have a higher line, it may be more appropriate to try and beat the opposing forwards to the ball instead of standing up and facing the shot where the opponent has time to set himself. It may be less essential to play a sweeper keeper if you have a sweeper or libero if you have a defender on a covering duty as well. So we're going to talk about central defence. We have obviously 3 different roles that you can use. We have a central defender, a ball-playing defender, and a no-nonsense centre-back. We'll discuss some of the common central defensive pairings and also the less common. The following duties you have generally is defend, stopper, and cover. This applies for all 3. The roles themselves are fairly similar in most respects, and the defensive distribution is the most significant difference in all 3 roles. So let's talk about the no-nonsense defender. So the no-nonsense defender just literally does what it says in the title. It just clears the ball as high up the pitch as possible. Of course, it tries to ensure that you do not get caught in possession at the back, but in turn it does turn over possession to your opponents quicker and can leave you under sustained pressure. A good idea is if your team does not possess the skill to keep hold of the ball in the back line. So very good in terms of your lower league tactics. So the central defender will distribute the ball to nearby teammates, helping you keep possession in the back line and calmly distribute the ball to midfield. There's a risk of getting caught in possession in the back line. However, it can alleviate pressure on your back line by keeping the ball and building the attacks and distributing the ball to players in the midfield capable of influencing the game in the middle and the final thirds. So the ball-playing defender is one of the most popular roles on Football Manager 2020 just because the way that the style they play in terms of starting the attacks, the counter-attacking opportunities, by playing through balls to players, hitting the ball up pitch, they're very generally good passers of the ball. Of course, you do need to make sure that they are good at passing, otherwise you can turn over possession dangerously and cheaply if your players tries to pass overly ambitious passes he is not capable of. You can pair no-nonsense defenders as they do not affect the balance or overall passing structure. They simply play direct, focusing on clearing their lines. You can pair central defenders as well, as they'll just kind of focus on the simple playing a short pass type of style game. The ball-playing defender, however, plays through balls and attempts more progressive passes due to the increased creativity, which suits teams playing from the back. The ball-playing defender could be paired with just a simple central defender. This works because the central defender can help maintain possession at the back, passing to his more creative partner instead of hoofing the ball clear like a no-nonsense defender, and it's a safety-first approach. Let's talk about the roles now in terms of the defend, stopper and cover. So the duties provide a variation in defensive approach, and these can significantly change the way your defense balances. The defend duty is the standard approach, aiming to defend in line with the team instructions on marking and pressing, holding the defensive line and winning the ball when appropriate. The stopper duty aims to step up early to engage the opposition and quickly win the ball back. If this works, this can snuff out the danger earlier before a player has the chance to set himself. On the flip side, if your player is turned or passed around, it can expose your team and open up space for your opposition, stepping ahead of your defensive line. Cover duty will drop off and try to catch any players breaching the defensive line. This can leave your opponents more time and space just in front of your defense unopposed, but it can also prevent your opponents from breaking through without a player to cover and track their runs, reducing their chances of getting a clean shot away in behind. So you can play most combinations of duties in the backline. However, most importantly, you should not play a pair of stoppers or a pair of covering defenders. The stoppers will expose too much space in behind, and the covers will give too much room in front of the defence and fail to challenge for the ball often enough. So both pairings can badly expose your offside trap too, by either allowing room behind the fullback or behind the centre-backs, played onside by the fullbacks. The defend-defend pairing tend to stay in line better and are significantly better for shape retention and playing an offside trap. So the stopper-cover pairing tends to exaggerate the best qualities of each individual, with an aggressive defender to attack the ball early, reducing room for the opposition forwards, and the covering defender can make up for the aggressiveness of the stopper with his excellent positioning and pace. The stopper can make up for the covering defender's deep positioning and sometimes lack of aggression by closing down the space in front of the defence. This pairing can cause problems maintaining the offside trap, as the defenders may not always hold the line, allowing gaps for your opponents to exploit. When playing through at the back, you have to consider the implications of the wide players and their positioning. If your fullbacks and wingbacks are fairly attacking minded, then your wide central defenders will have to be able to cover the space left out wide. Having a back three can take a player away from the flanks or the central zone in the pitch. A ball-playing defender can help out with a deficit in creativity, and the central defenders can help retain possession. This is worth considering, but the suitability of your players for their roles is the most important. However, the real art with three at the back comes with the distribution of roles. The general theories are that you can either keep your entire defence in line, preserving your offside trap and shape by keeping all of your centre-backs on the defend duty like on the screen. Or you can have stoppers out wide, closing down the opposition wide players to prevent crosses coming in, leaving 2 defenders in the centre to challenge the opponents, with the covering defender capable of tracking runs of the players behind the stoppers. You can also invert this by having a stopper to close down the space in the centre, forcing the ball to play wide and cover the balls into the channels for the opposition wide players to chase in behind. So let's talk about the Libero now. So your other option is to use a Libero. Due to the positioning of this role, the best suited is only for use with the defend duty pair. The Libero is a creative option who gets forward from his initial deep positioning and gets into midfield to start dictating the game. This is suitable for a defender with good intelligence and technique who can help add the numbers to the midfield. With a Libero breaking forward, you need to consider where other defensive player may come from. If you have a back three with aggressive wing backs and a Libero, you may find you are simply leaving 2 central defenders back to deal with the counter-attacks. So of course, when you're looking at your midfields as well, if you're using a Libero, make sure your centre midfielder is on defend. It will kind of accommodate the Libero as well. Let's talk about the halfback now. The halfback drops between the centre-backs in possession, creating a back three. This behaviour occurs during build-up. Once the ball progresses into the final third, he can take up more advanced positions, similar to an anchorman. Out of possession, he sits in front of the back line and acts like a regular DM. The halfback is also only suited in front of the centre-back pair because the third defender would cause problems with a defensive behaviour, getting in the way of his natural tendency to drop deep. This can allow you to play more aggressive fullbacks, with the halfback providing additional cover against counter. So remember, your defence roles affect your defensive distribution and duties affect your defensive approach. Defend duties stay in line better. Make sure you consider the space you vacate on the flanks if you play 3 at the back, and consider your approach to possession and your players' individual capabilities when assessing your roles and duties selection. Now on to the central midfield. This is where it gets serious. Good decisions in this area of the pitch win games, bad decisions lose games. It's as simple as that. So there's so much variation that you can do in midfield, but essentially you need to follow the 3 simple rules: defensive security, dynamic running, technical control and creativity. I would strongly suggest that you always have a defend duty in your central midfield. There are ways of having dynamic running and technical control in your team that come from places other than central midfield, but you simply need to include a defensive security as your first priority in central midfield. So in regards to defensive security, it's a choice of either pressing opponents or sitting in shape. So basically, are you closing down your opponents to deny them space, or are you providing a solid barrier to avoid them breaking through? I would strongly suggest that you always have a defend duty in your central midfield. There are ways of having a dynamic running and technical control in your team that come from places other than central midfield, but you simply need to include defensive security as your first priority in central midfield. So I wouldn't suggest using an anchorman in a pressing system while all the rest can be used in a pressing system. In regards to a shape system, a ball-winning midfielder wouldn't really fit into a shape system while all the other roles would. There are defensive options available in both defensive and central midfield zones. Typically, more pressing systems will include more players in advanced positions high up the pitch. Shape-based systems will typically have players in deeper areas as well as your roles and duties. The shape of your team can play a very significant role in how you defend. Just a quick one, you may have noticed that I said that an anchorman and a ball... So anchorman couldn't really fit in a pressing system while a ball-winning midfielder couldn't fit in a shape system. I want to talk about that. So in regards to the anchorman, is designed to protect space, specifically that number 10 area of the pitch. So by his nature, he won't close down. If he is used in a pressing system, he is likely to create gaps by not maintaining pressure on the man. A ball-winning midfielder is the complete opposite. He won't just protect the space, he will go after the players to deny space, which means in a shape system, he will vacate areas you are trying to occupy. So dynamic running now. This is another issue which is affected by how your team plays. If you tend to play on the break, you need a good ball carriers and aggressive running from deep. More direct teams may be less dependent on runs breaking into the penalty area, but may need people who can provide a threat from distance or picking up balls at the edge of the box. A possession-based team may be more focused on using the ball, but still needs to be effective running to provide the movement to support the use of possession. This running might be slightly less aggressive, but the chances still need to be taken. You can see a little graph on the screen right now about dynamic running in terms of endurance and a sprinter. You'll see what suits what. The position of players make a difference in the types of runs they make. Typically, players making runs from deeper positions are more likely to make aggressive surges toward goal, whereas those who sit in advanced positions typically tend to rely on short runs near a goal or into lateral positions. Some of your runners may be those who break aggressively beyond the forwards or who keep up with your team, covering large distances to be present across all the pitch. You can characterise these by sprinters, aggressive runs ahead of defence, and endurance runs energetically to keep up with the play. Players who get forward aggressively can benefit from a reserve partner to provide cover for them if they get caught upfield. For example, a secundo volante and an anchorman suit, because both sit deep naturally, but the secundo volante gets forward aggressively while the anchorman covers the space left. Technical control and creativity, very similar to dynamic running. You can get this from other places other than central midfield. If you play direct styles with only two central midfielders, they may need to prioritise other aspects of midfield performance. Possession-based styles almost always require at least a reasonable element of technical and creative work in the centre of the pitch. The technical control can be provided from different areas of midfield. A regista, for example, has a complete freedom to receive the ball off the defence, drift around in space and play killer balls or play passes that break the midfield lines. A trequartista does much of the same thing, but in his final third, drifting around in space, waiting to make the killer pass or become available for a 1-2. You can use multiple playmakers to try and offer technical control in multiple areas of the pitch. So, for example, a deep line playmaker and an advanced playmaker can allow your team to play progressive passes into the final third, attempting to dominate space wherever it exists. This can be useful if the opposition teams are strong, where you traditionally likely to dominate the ball. You can kind of see on the screen right now, in terms of technical control, who's a passer and who's a dribbler in terms of the roles. Technical control is not just someone who likes playing forward passes or through balls. This can be reflected by players who like to dictate the passing and tempo in build-up play. Those who are constantly looking for players making runs in advanced positions, and those who look to drive with the ball at their feet. You will notice that we start to see some players appearing in multiple lists as they can fulfill several functions within a team. Creativity is not just earned through work on the ball, but often those who either drop deep, drift wide, or move into pockets of space can draw opponents out of position or create overloads in other areas. So the trequartista has a lot of lateral movement as well as simply roaming around. This can help create a third man overload in wide areas. An enganche will stay within the number 10 area of the pitch as well. Don't forget, there is no specific this will or this won't work, but all your decisions on style, formation, roles and duties should all complement each other. So talking about no wide players now, of course you've got certain roles on the screen you'll see right now of roles in midfield that help support with the wing. So a Mazzella Carrilero and a trequartista will push out wide and help you support that as well. Obviously these numbers need to offer a great bulk of creativity and forward movement as well as being hard-working defensive force. So ideally having one of these defenders on defend will really help you out. It is important to emphasise here that the width is something that you need to consider both defensively and offensively. It either needs to come from your fullbacks or wingbacks getting forward fairly aggressively, or you can utilise lateral movement from central midfielder roles like the trequartista, which drifts wide, the Mazzella, who drives wide and without the ball, or a Carrilero, who will shuttle up and down the half spaces. So let's talk about the width now. Your wide players will consist of fullbacks and wingbacks, and wide midfielders and wingers. Teams will either have two wide players which will need to perform in partnership, or a lone wide player. The formation you use will significantly impact the choice of roles and duties in the wide areas. A solitary wide player has more responsibilities and has to be able to contribute to all the areas of play, whereas a pair of wide players can specialise and achieve a more balanced setup. Of course, sacrificing wide players is a way of having more central defenders or midfielders to win control of the ball or territory. However, wide men used well can contribute to a possession game, a creative game, or be used for their goal scoring exploits, or even the work rate and defensive abilities. This applies to all positions down the flank. A fullback who gets into superb advanced positions is a great asset to have, as is a winger who tracks back and makes tackles too. You'll see on the screen right now the best roles suited to a lone wide player. Many systems in football utilise just a single natural source of width on each flank. Italy is a nation which in football terms tends to distrust or at least not use wingers. Italy traditionally also likes to use three at the back system a lot more, which means that the easiest place to find the extra man to use in the system is often on the flanks. When a player is tasked with providing offensive, defensive and supporting play down your flanks, he needs to be able to get forward and provide width, track back and hold a good defensive position, keep up with play, being a constant outlet on the flank to retain possession, provide a source of penetration in wide areas. Of course, that is a hefty workload to consider. The other major concern is where to place your lone wide player. The formation you select is your team's defensive shape, so you need to consider how far back you want your lone wide player to sit. If they sit further back, they provide more secure defensive shape, but if they sit further forward, they could perhaps press quicker in wide areas or provide a quicker counter-attacking threat. The higher up the pitch you play with your lone wide man, the more inclined you must be to track back instead, which you can reflect by more conservative duties. Okay, let's talk about wide partnerships now. So when you play with a pair of wide players in partnership, this allows an abundance of options available to you. Firstly, consider how your team should be creating the bulk of chances, and therefore how you want your players to behave. Some of the wide players can move into central areas, helping your midfield to dominate, while other wide players on the flank provides the width. Some pairs both operate in wide areas, sometimes an overlap, others with one player providing an outlet or crossing from a different area, for example one deep and one from the byline. Typically with a wide partnership, you almost always have players in the DR, DL positions, as tangible benefits of playing in the wing-back positions are often diminished by playing other wide players just in front of them. You can use combinations with a wide player moving inside to either support midfield dominance or draw players out of position, with the other wide players driving on, retaining width. Types of players that come inside are inverted wing-back, wide playmaker, inside forwards, etc. I would again emphasise that you really need to ensure that one of your wide players stays wide to stretch the pitch more. This can be the advanced player or the deeper player. You can use two wide players who remain wide, who rely on overlaps to create space, and the players in question attempting crosses from different positions, example a deep and a byline that can create different angles for your team. So overlaps are naturally created by a player making lots of forward runs from deep, and an advanced player that either moving inside or having a lower duty that will encourage the deeper player to move on ahead. The aim being that you can overload the opposition fullback or to create confusion for which defensive player picks up which one of your players. A wise idea for the balance of your team is to have an attack duty fullback, a support duty wide player on one of the flanks, with a support duty fullback on the other flank behind the attack duty wide player. The variety is important if you're struggling to break down sides or create chances. Remember, plan first how many wide players you're using before you decide on the roles. If you're playing a lone wide man, you cannot afford to have them doing defense only job. They must offer an outlet. Consider that they must also have a good defensive position to begin with, or be able to track back and defend instead. Dual wide men must work in combination, ensure they do not get in each other's way, yet are still capable of providing overlaps and overloads. So let's move on to the forwards now. We're going to look at various types of pairing from lone forwards with also attacking midfielder pairing. Okay, we're going to talk about the big man, little man partnership, which is very popular on FM20. So many partnerships over the years have been built on getting the best out of the physical prowess of players. A larger player can provide an effective target, holding the ball up or playing passes to a quicker teammate, or playing behind if needed. The larger player generally plays deeper, flicking on the ball, winning aerial challenges, although it is possible for the larger player to stay higher up the pitch, flicking the ball back into space or to a teammate, or coming in from slightly deeper but at pace. The smaller player can look to break in behind or into pockets of space, often created by the large forward beating a defender to the ball. Of course, these partnerships generally rely on good wide delivery and crossing from wingers and also fullbacks, or long balls from the ball-playing defenders if needed. These pairs generally suit fairly direct tactics. They are generally target man and poacher combinations, although an advanced forward can provide a more rounded version of the poacher, and the larger forward can still be effective in a more rounded role if he possesses the skills, as an example, deep line forward or complete forward. Don't forget, this can still work with attacking midfielders from support too. A powerful lone forward such as a target man or a complete forward can be supported by an inside forward, a shadow striker or attacking midfielder, attacking the box from deep areas and make better use of pace and movement. So let's talk about a creator and a scorer partnership. So the most balanced role for this type of partnership are a deep line forward and an advanced forward. Of course, a complete forward can be an exceptional creator or goal scorer, or both, generally shaped by his duty. A poacher is obviously a good goal scorer, but is less likely to feed his supporting partner any chances in return. A pressing forward has become more and more important in modern football. Despite the full range of duties available, he will offensively ultimately act in a similar manner to an advanced forward. Also, a trequartista is a superb creator and needs someone capable of attacking the space and chances he creates. He can function from a striker or an AMC position, but an advanced playmaker or Enganche can also be superb deep at creative force. Don't forget the inside forward can be an excellent creator on a support duty with the angled balls from out wide into a breaking forward instead, whereas an attack duty, he can attack spaces left more. So we're going to talk about the false 9, false 10 system now. So it's based on the central striker dropping deep, attempting to draw a defender with him, or simply allowing space for him or a teammate to attack and unsettle the defence. The false 10 aspect is the advanced midfielder pushing from deep into the vacated space to emerge as a significant or main goal scoring threat. The main and obvious way of achieving this is select a false 9 and a shadow striker, like you can see on the screen right now. They will link up very well in the final third and tend to significantly suit a possession and intricate movement based system. And that is the end to the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please drop a like on the video, drop a comment, let me know if you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye everybody.